As a construction executive and small business owner, I'm always looking for good talent to join our ranks. And there's a huge labor shortage in construction, especially when it comes to niche and specialty trades like the one I lead. So when I come across a good candidate, I'm excited. And from time to time, when I go to hire somebody who seems like a great fit for our company, I realize that they're undocumented and they can't work for our company. A lot of construction companies hire undocumented people. We don't. We're very conservative when it comes to business practices, not conservative in the political sense, but conservative relative to our relationship with government regulation. We're very by the book. So it obviously begs the question, what do these other companies do that hire all these undocumented people for their companies? The business interests in America have a lot at stake in our immigration debates today. The business interests, big business and small business, is heavily reliant on low-wage undocumented workers or high-wage undocumented workers. But that pool of people is heavily reliant on business interests and would be highly disruptive if there was these mass deportations that the Trump administration wants to do. But I think it still begs the question, so what are these employers doing to hire undocumented workers? So first, the first way that it takes place is every employer who has to give out an I-9 form upon the new employer starting, those employees are often providing fake, borrowed, or stolen Social Security numbers. On that first day of work, when given the I-9 employment and verification document, they're using that fake Social Security number to correctly fill it out. Two, a lot of these companies hire subcontracting firms that specialize in labor only. So large company hires a smaller company and they provide the actual labor. So the undocumented workers don't actually work for the company themselves. They work for a labor company that is taking on the legal exposure on behalf of the other company. That's their sole purpose. Is essentially it's a company that only serves to hold the legal exposure of hiring undocumented labor. In that case, the primary employer wouldn't have to verify work authorization. You see this a lot in construction, agriculture, and hospitality, where a lot of the workers who work for a hotel chain don't, the room service people don't work for the hotel chain themselves. They work for a subcontracting firm or several subcontracting firms that shields them from liability. Three, a lot of companies pay workers off the books in cash. So in that case, the company executive will take cash out of the business and give it to individuals as payment. In that case, the workers don't appear on any payroll records, and it means that they avoid payroll taxes. It also means that those workers are not subject to wage regulations and other regulations, and so that's where you see all sorts of workplace abuse and other violations. Because there's no paper trail that the people work for there, you see, essentially the things that are really terrible that go on in companies, workplace abuse, etc. The issue with that is obviously that employers are, if you're being paid in cash, it means that the employers are not contributing to payroll taxes, so they are avoiding payroll taxes, and the employee is avoiding income taxes, and obviously other like wage regulations and wage taxes. 4, a lot of undocumented workers will use ITIN numbers through independent contractors. So individual is hired by one of these subcontractors, and they only provide an ITIN number. An ITIN number allows workers to file taxes, but doesn't grant work authorization. Again, likewise, the paying off the books or even using fake or Social Security numbers. This is a way people are avoiding having to fill out that I-9 form. A lot of industries have historically relied on undocumented labor. Immigration enforcement of small businesses and large business is pretty infrequent. It's a pretty low risk for a lot of companies, whether it's a New York City-based construction company or a upstate New York-based dairy farm. There's really scant enforcement of this. The government can enforce it through an I-9 audit or an E-Verify audit. They're very unlikely to take place, especially in New York, but really across the country, this really does not happen a whole lot. One area it does happen is if there are workplace abuses. If an employer is abusive or creating unsafe conditions, cities like New York, states like New York will have anonymous hotlines that workers can call into to report their employer, that shields the employee from threat of deportation or threat of backlash against them. Right? It's an anonymous tip hotline. That said, it's likewise pretty rare that the federal government enforces, or even state and local governments across the country, enforces these laws. Back in 2012, Mitt Romney, one of his key components of his immigration policy was that he said he wanted self-deportation. He wanted to create conditions here in America that are so unfavorable to undocumented people and undocumented workers that they would return back to the countries from which they came. You haven't really heard too much more about this because so much of that policy is enforcement of E-Verify and I-9 forms and I-9 audits that you just don't see a lot of business interests promoting because they benefit so much from paying workers less than what they would have to pay legal workers, legal American workers. The hiring of undocumented workers is illegal under federal law, but it's still common because lack of enforcement and because it's widespread. And so if one company is doing it, other companies feel like they have the incentive to match what their competitors are doing. This is a part of our immigration debate that really should be more important and more spoken about.